Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Mokonoman at YouTube with another model video. Today, having a go at another original Bandai B-club resin kit, but for the first time a figure. 112 Elle from Mobile Suit Gundam ZZ. She was one of the pilots who rode on the Mark II. And was somewhat of a minor character following the protagonist and the rest of the crew for the series of the show. A friend of mine acquired 3 of these 112 kits, gifted one to me as well as another mate in Sydney, Tristan, to do a 3-way group build. Sadly at this stage I'm the only one who's kind of started and got anywhere as well as finished it in the 12 months that this challenge has been set up, but hopefully the other guys will get around to their build. The box itself is no bigger than a mobile phone. It's approximately an inch thick, contains one set of instructions that gives you a very crude indication of the color scheme in Japanese, as well as 3 parts in resin. It seems to be hand cast in a rubber mold. No chamber pot, as there was a couple of air bubbles located around the head and hair, as well as fitting issues around the torso and legs. If I was to give a rough guess, it would have been made somewhere around the late 80s. Most likely shortly released when the anime was out as a limited pre-release item or just on release. Working straight on it, I scrubbed the 3 pieces in water filled with dishwashing detergent. I gave it a good brush up with a hard brush, a good wipe down clean, rinse in water, a good soak, and air dried on top of a towel to get rid of any possible release agents, though by the age of the box and how old this thing is, it could have dried and deteriorated eons ago. The 2 removed parts only really have an advantage for the casting process and has no point in colour separation whatsoever. I shouldn't disadvantage myself with post-painting assembly. So I decided to pin the ponytail as well as the arm immediately and superglue them in place. Utilising sandpaper, starting around 300 grit, working my way down to 1000 grit, I gave the whole surface a light buffing and sanding to give a nice grippy surface for the primer and paint to attach itself. Utilising a generic and local automotive lacquer primer, I shook the cam for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. There's no cheating or getting away or out of it. Gives a very good gas to paint ratio mix, and slowly dusted on the colour with a pin sticking out of the feet that's into the cardboard right now. This gave a nice even coat and did not flood any detail. Then using Denton Bog Putty, a single part polyester putty for automotive purposes, were applied where the arms, pants and other areas the mould misaligned, and gave this terrible gap down the seams of the figure. This was later on, after drying, sanded back with wet sandpaper starting from 240 grit onwards to 1000. And reapplied with primer. Once the model was nice and perfect and well matured, painting commenced. It's a bit too large to be hand painted in the miniature respects, though it could be done quite effectively and well. That doesn't seems to be where my skills are laid, though the figure is simplistic enough that a fair amount of airbrushing can be done. I decided to go for the flesh first, mask, and then attack the clothing. The character is mostly in a single tone of pink, which I happen to have the colour by Gaia Notes. It's one of the most vibrant and best pinks in the paint range. Brought that back from Japan for some reason, as well as a couple of other tones I was able to mix and specially purchase. Doing things like boots and cut off areas was easy enough by chopping Tamiya tape, applying paint, applying a barrier of acrylic clear, allowing sufficient time to dry, and another layer of masking to pick off a certain area. So all I had to really focus on was getting the flesh tones, the pink throughout the clothing, the boots, the t-shirt and the hair. This was a mixture of blue tack, masking tape and liquid mask. Airbrushing was also a great option from my point of view, as I was able to use a couple of tones to get the shading right in the folding of clothing, as well as downloading reference material and shading the colours just right to the anime art cell setting. All the smaller details were happily hand painted without seeing any brush strokes. This was about 7 to 8 very quick lightning round airbrushing sessions, as the sufficient time was required for drawing and whatnot. All the small details such as the eyes, the mouth, the hair ties, all the little badges around her clothing, shoelaces were easily picked up with lacquers and a paintbrush. Once everything was painted, I happened to have some very small eyes. They were far too small for 1/12, but as vintage anime characters seem to have unproportionately tiny eyes compared to modern day characters, this particular set I had just happened to work nicely. Once completely dry and the eyes were glossed over, a couple of layers of washes were picked out to pick up the fold clothing, as well as some of the joins and ends of the modular pieces. This led for that heavily hand-drawn 80s era dark Gundam look. There is a very unique look to the 80s anime cell shading, cell painting style throughout to the 90s and the big digital changes of the 2000s. So looking at it is not exactly appealing, and it isn't exactly my best work. It's in a scale and colour separation that I'm not 100% comfortable with, though with something this old and rare, and being just a privilege to be in possession of it, I did give it a fair amount of effort to be representative of the character in the original artist interpretation at the start of the video. It's not a very well made figure. The sculpt is absolutely spot on. I have no complaints regarding the sculpture whatsoever. It is very limiting to its time, and the character is not very iconic or exciting. I would not have bought this off the shelf and be keen to jump straight onto it, more so that it is a challenge between friends and absolutely lovely gift that I do cherish. So that led me to going onto it, though appreciating that at the high cost they were when released during the day, and that's all that fans had really had access to, as well as a very limited toy and figure collecting market. What people produced from the output of these items was the very best that the community had on offer. The standards, shape, details, sizes and manufacturing process for modern day anime figures just can't really compete anymore, and this definitely does look like a throwback to the community of old and the activity of garage kit modelers from absolute way back. The process of building it was quick and simple. That was done almost in a day or so, in between other projects, not overly consuming. Though the painting stage, even though each session of masking and painting was very, very quick, I would not say I've spent much time with this at all, but the tedious nature of the masking just to get the small section and the waiting for drying led me to put it away a few times and not touch it for many, many months. It would have been designed for hand painting, and someone who was skilled in hand painting figures would have done better. Nonetheless, having access to this collectible item and the very best, the opportunity to have a go at it where most people wouldn't even get the chance to see it or lay their hands on the box to collect it and put it in a backlog or crack it open and build it, very privileged to have the chance to document the process of building this. Nonetheless, I hope you guys can enjoy it for the rarity and a look back into the past as much as I have from a vintage standpoint. As a bonus, the lid or the base was off a biscuit tin from Christmas. It's very high class and metallic. Drilled a hole and just put the existing peg straight through it. She is freestanding. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content, especially for the more unusual, rare, bizarre side of the Gundam scale modelling experience, Gunpla and B-club. I do have quite a few videos scattered from many years ago that I've made in the model kit review playlist on this channel, so have a dig and you'll see stuff that no one else has really reviewed before or built. Be sure to check out the description section, the links, our Facebook page, all that other stuff. We make videos once, sometimes twice a week, and shall catch you guys next time. Stay tuned.